So how will Guzman and Gomez go on the market? Well, Ed Boyd asked Emanuel Datt from Datt Capital.
Yeah, look, thanks, Ed. I think that GYG is being priced at a significant premium to what most would consider to be intrinsic value. I'd like to, clearly GYG, it's a growing company. It's been private equity sort of backed to date. And I think that it's listing on the boards on the public market at about a revenue multiple of about 6 times, which is fairly comparable with sort of global peers. However, it's sort of significantly overpriced when you sort of look back to its Australian, QSR or quick service restaurant type peer groups that are priced typically at more 2 times, revenue versus the 6 that GYG is being floated at tomorrow. So to me, that really is a very strong indication that public markets are probably viewed favourably as sort of an exit. We've seen for a period of time there's been sort of a bit of a inversion in terms between sort of private markets and public markets. And it certainly looks like if this listing is successful, then the status quo or normalisation of public markets trading at higher relative multiples than private markets will sort of come back about. So it's going to be a very interesting one to see it hit the boards tomorrow.
Yeah, it's an interestingly structured IPO as well, because I think only roughly 10% of the total $2.2 billion value is actually up for grabs tomorrow, and it's not open to public investors. So really, this is about the private investors that have backed the company from the beginning, getting in there and getting the company listed on the ASX, another sort of different way to raise funds apart from private equity, which they've done in the past.
Yeah, indeed. And as you say, 10% of new capital to be issued, and plus another 5% in terms of the original sort of sponsors selling down a stake. So I think that that leaves you with a free float of about 15%, which is pretty tight, I would say, and pretty unconventional, I guess, for this sort of listing. However, it does probably allow the sponsors of this deal to sort of raise capital at a fairly elevated valuation that we spoke on. So I think it's going to be intriguing to see how the market likes it or dislikes it tomorrow. I think my expectations are we'll probably see this come strongly out of the traps, so to speak, for the short term, but it's more sort of the medium term that we're sort of most interested to see if the valuation is sustainable and whether the company can deliver upon its promises to market. So it's going to be an intriguing one to watch.
Yeah, and one of those big promises is the expansion of its stores. It's got 185 stores in Australia, and the idea is to get to 1,000 within about 20 years from now. Do you think that is an achievable growth target for the company? It seems like a massive amount of GYG stores to be in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think for us, long-term projections, it's very hard to tell how realistic they are. So on the shorter term, they've guided that they're looking to achieve about 225 stores by the end of FY25. So that implies about 20% growth on the existing sort of number of stores. But, most interesting to me is that, 20% growth, sure, it's pretty good, but it's certainly not hyper growth. And you're effectively having this company floated at very hefty sort of revenue multiple that sort of I would probably typically see in a hyper growth scenario. And but look, I guess ultimately over time, the company have sort of disclosed that they're looking to expand overseas, and we've seen sort of other companies like Domino's, for instance, sort of pursue international growth strategies. And I think 1,000 stores, as you say, is probably a little bit on the higher side of my expectations for Australia itself. But whether they can extend and expand this model internationally into other markets that are perhaps perspective for this sort of product, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. But you certainly don't want to put too much stock in long-term projections, especially as a company's first hitting the boards on the public.
Well, Emanuel, I know they hit the boards at 12 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, so I'll be watching closely. Thanks so much for coming on the program this afternoon.